arrived at?
So at this point, this program is seen as sort of a foundational component of our workforce recruitment effort. And so we have not specifically designated any industries or any sectors here. We're aware of the fact that there really is no industry or sector in New Hampshire that is not experiencing a labor shortage right now.
Thank you. So you're probably aware that we have a state loan repayment program that we allocate general funds to for healthcare workers. This budget appropriated about half as much money to it as the last budget, but we could certainly fill all the requests. To what extent will healthcare get the money that you're proposing?
Well, I think the healthcare industry probably is among the most impacted industries right now, obviously in the state as it relates to being able to recruit and retain workforce. I do think that this would be a very popular program for those industries. I'm also aware that this is foundational in nature, as I had mentioned. There are, I think, other opportunities to continue to find ways to specifically target industries such as healthcare. But we've sort of brought this forward in a pilot sort of format in order to be able to determine the workability of this and the effectiveness of it before we started targeting specific industries.
Thank you. But this is one-time money, isn't it?
That's
The
correct.
17 million, so it's a pilot, but how would you propose funding it on an ongoing basis? If 1,000 students or 1,500 students cost $17 million once?
Well, that means, Senator, that would be part of the ongoing policy decision-making that we'd all be making forward. This is something the legislature has looked at in the past in previous iterations, a version of this type of program, and whether that is worthy of ongoing additional federal investment, assuming because the ARPA funds are still available through the end of 2024, if we wanted to make more investments of those funds, or if we wanted to find some availability in state funds to continue that program. That's a decision that we would all have to make at that point.
I have two more questions, if I
Can
could.
I hang on just a moment. Ma'am, I'm sorry, there are nothing can be raised above your head.
Jesus?
It doesn't matter.
The Lord?
It doesn't matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. How long a work commitment are you proposing? Will it be similar to the state loan repayment program?
It's 4 years would be the total commitment under the program.
4 years. And finally, how are you going to measure success? What specific parameters do you have?
Well, I think first and foremost would of course be the number of employees that are still in the program at the end of the program. I think it's pretty common assessment in the workforce area that if you're able to hold on to an individual for a period of 3+ years, generally their inclination is to stay with that employer or in the area that they're in. So that's a little bit of the thought process there. We'll see when we get to the end of this where things stand.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Representative Leach.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up to Senator Rosenwald's question. You say in here, and I was a little puzzled by your response, that you're not quite sure who may be administering this, but you point out that you intend to partner with another agency or entity. Could you tell us who that might be?
This Business Finance Administration, BFA, would be the administrator of this program.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Senator Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you go into some depth about what you mean by disproportionately affected by COVID?
Well, I can let Chase get into that a little bit more, but it has to do with the federal eligibility components of the funding that we're using for this program.
No, press the red button.
Good, just press it once. You're
Yep.
good.
Senator Guy, yes, the disproportionately impacted standard is established by the American Rescue Plan Act, and the targeting of this fund to those at a certain percentage or lower of the AMI helps meet that criteria.
Follow-up?
AMI meaning adjusted median income.
Area median.
Area median income.
Yes?
So what we're establishing here is an incentive based upon income.
I mean, the commissioner can also jump in, but I think it's an incentive more focused on student debt relief needs as opposed to specifically income. It's just in order to meet certain requirements or eligibility standards for use of these funds, it's called upon entities or states like ours to have requirements or areas of focus like this when using these funds in this fashion.
Yes.
Thank you. So,
Excuse me, could you move your microphone closer? There seem to be some issues with hearing. Okay, thank you.
thank you, Madam Chair. So, supposing a person takes these funds for a year or two of college and then decides not to finish, is there any mechanism in place to claw those back, or have we just wasted the money?
So I think the details of the program, some of the finer elements need to be worked out with BFA as we move forward, but the current thinking is to not necessarily advance funds before reaching certain milestones of work eligibility. So the hope would be to avoid having to claw back funds based on how the program itself would be structured.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Daniels?
Just want to express some concerns that I have. Commissioner, I know that you were part of a study committee a couple terms ago where we identified over 100 training courses. I go around now and there are help wanted signs everywhere. Companies are being creative in the way that they attract people and the benefits that they offer. I get concerned when we're taking another $17 million, even though it's federal, it still comes out of my other pocket. Why are we doing this when there are so many companies out there that are seeking and finding creative ways already to attract? Why do we have to do a recruitment program that costs us so much money?
I agree, Senator. I think there's this. We're looking at this from a couple of perspectives. First is there is obviously a retention challenge for a lot of employers right now to keep their employees, and there are multiple ways that you can go about that from a policy standpoint to make investments in training programs and so on and so forth. At the same time, we have a people problem. We have a limited amount of people that are available to fill the jobs in New Hampshire right now, and so what we need to do is try to attract some of those people that are maybe not currently here or not currently in the workforce to take those jobs with New Hampshire employers. This program is specifically designated towards the latter. What we're hoping to be able to do is attract students, people who have received certifications or degrees, either here in New Hampshire or elsewhere, to come here and take jobs with New Hampshire employers. In order to get these funding, you have to demonstrate that you've taken a job with a New Hampshire employer and that you've been able to, and that you've stayed in that job during the term of the benefit. So it's aimed at specifically getting people here to fill a lot of those jobs. And when we look at the demographics, the long-term sustainability of the workforce, there is obviously an inclination towards people who are at earlier stages in their careers. So that's sort of the thought process with this particular program. I know on the training stuff, you and I have spoken about that over many years. There may be some programs that we are able to design and bring forward, and we can have that discussion at that point as to how we want to handle that in sort of concert with other programs that are already existing in the state.
Yes, go ahead. In finance, we seem to have an unwritten rule that we do not use one-time money for operating costs. The money that you're talking about is basically a 4-year program, and then people go. So where is the sustainability in keeping people in that job? you're not going to go back to the federal pool or the state pool for more money to supplement what an employer is getting.
Yeah, true. I think that the point though is that, and what we expect of this program is that we would see obligation of these resources pretty quickly. I think it would be a popular program to be able to help students and adults in a lot of cases offset or reduce the debt load that they're carrying in exchange for taking a job for a period of time in New Hampshire. I would expect that most of these resources would be used up before the end of 2022, and that we would just be managing the program as it is right now, going forward over the next 4 years. As I mentioned to Senator Rosenwald, at the end of that period of time, it's the decision of all of us to continue some version of this. We would have to find resources that are available to us to continue it or not. But there wouldn't be any ongoing cost necessarily beyond the reimbursements that would happen and processing those reimbursements for the people who apply for and receive the funding in 2022.
Final question.
Yes, go ahead.
So why should people be entitled to student debt relief now? But those who graduated, say, last year or the year before, or those who are graduating 3 or 4 years from now, won't be eligible for it.
Agreed, and this is one of those programs where we absolutely cannot design a program that's all things to all people. I think what we're trying to do is demonstrate that a program that has a student debt relief component to it tied to a work requirement in New Hampshire would provide enough of an impetus to get somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 new non-existent workers into the state employment system.
Okay, are there any further questions?
Senator Guy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Guy.
Well, we're in the corner here, Madam Chair.
I know, well, you had your chance before.
So a question as to why businesses themselves can't provide incentives to employers. It seems to me as though with this program, the government is stepping in to pay the costs that businesses traditionally pay for recruiting their own workers. And for that reason, I'm prone to object to it.
I think that may be the case with a lot of employers. A lot of larger employers I am aware of are doing some pretty substantial things to attract a workforce, including relocation costs and so on and so forth. But I don't think that's universally the case with all employers in the state. And a lot of our employers are, as you well know, Senator, smaller employers who may not have the resources at this point in time, given what we've been through over the last year or so, to be able to make that investment, but they still need the resources, they still need that staff as a resource to continue to advance their business. So at this point, it does seem like it would be a good moment in time if there were one to make an investment such as this.
Yes, you may.
I would submit that we have a 4-year or 2-year training program that an employer has a need for an employee now, that this is not going to help the situation it's intended to based on the COVID pandemic, which we expect to end at some point. So there's a disconnect for me in 4 years or 2 years down the road, paying for a college or an associate degree or a technical degree for a need that's now that an employer will benefit from 2 or 4 years down the road.
Well, just to clarify, this would be for students right now. And they would enter the workforce, and then over a period of 4 years, there would be a reimbursement on an annual basis to those employees or to the debt holders for that in exchange for their employment.
One question.
Yes,
So what do we then tell those who attempt to qualify and don't? That because for some arbitrary reason, you're going to have to pay back your college loan, but because we chose somebody, they're not going to have to.
This is a program, and one of those programs where there's probably not enough money in terms of the student debt that's out there right now, particularly in New Hampshire, to cover every single dollar of that debt.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't feel that I have enough information to vote on this item one way or another, so I'd like to move that we lay it on the table and ask the department, Work Gopher, to come back at the next meeting with a fleshed out plan, including sustainability projections.
I'll second the motion to table.
Senator Rosenwald moves to table. Representative Edwards. Seconds. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Roll call on 21-357 for a tabling motion. Representative Edwards? Yes. Clerk votes yes. Representative Burke?
Yes.
Representative Fishman?
Yes.
Senator Daniels?
Yes.
Senator Morse?
Yes.
Senator Guyton?
No.
Senator Rosenwald?
Yes.
Senator Del Sandro? Yes. Representative Umberger?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-1.
Vote on FIS 21-357 is to 9-1 in favor of tabling. So, could I have a motion to accept the remaining items on the consent calendar under tab 10? Thank you. Senator D'Alessandro moves. Senator Rosenwald second. Thank you very much, I'm sorry. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 10-0. Thank you very much. Mr. King, is the late item in tab 10 or tab 11?
There are no positions, so 21361 is a request of $8 million of ARPA funds for the purpose of
Right.
testing.
But is it,
You could take it up now if you would like, because it is appropriate.
okay. Okay. All right, we will, no, yes, we did vote on it. Okay, thank you. All right. FIS 21-361.
Correct.
Okay. It's the late item, yes.
And we're going to take it up now, Madam Chair.
Yes. They decided that they wanted to do it now. It's currently located in your books under tab 11. Okay. FIS 21-361 is from the Department of Health and Human Services. And the purpose of this is to respond to public health emergency for its negative economic impacts. Are there any questions for the department?
Madam Chair, you're saying it's in tab 11, and I don't have it in tab 11.
All right.
So it is a late item, so depending on pre-fiscal meeting, they were put in that tab, it is a late item, which is separate, it's 21361, I do have a copy if you need it, Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. I'm a little reluctant to take this item up if it's a late item, simply because of the very recent history of the Executive Council adding a controversial late item to bypass public notice. And if we don't need to discuss this today,
If you will
I just assume
excuse me,
move
please.
to table it.
This was an error on the part of DAS. This was into DAS in plenty of time. It got shuffled under some paperwork, which I can't imagine DAS having any paperwork. But the result was that it had to enter our agenda as a late item because of the problems encountered in DAS. HHS had in fact sent this over in plenty of time. And it was basically an administrative error on the part of DAS as to why it is a late item. It was not a late, what we would, yeah, it was not a late submittal. It went on time, but just didn't get acted on because of that. So, thank you.
So Madam Chair, is it your position that because it was an administrative error, there's no public interest in having received due notice of this voting item?
I believe this was posted on the website on what date, Mr. Kane?
I'd have to go back with, the beginning of this week. My guess is on Tuesday it was posted to, under late items and additional information on the LBA website, which is the second column in that grid, correct?
Thank you. Yes, is this a question for, okay, well, the folks from HHS?
No, it's a question for either Mr. Kane or yourself.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Proceed. So does that posting on Tuesday comply with the state laws for giving due notice to the public?
It does.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a motion to table.
No.
Motion.
Being informed that this has been legally noticed, I'll withdraw my tabling motion.
Thank you. Okay, Senator D'Alessandro moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Senator Rosenwald seconds. Okay, now we have a question. If we could ask HHS to come forward.
They still have one.
Yes.
Being that these are 100% federal funds, what are the restrictions or the strings attached to taking this money, and in particular on information that has to be reported back to the federal government?
So these funds are 100% ARPA funds, and if I might also mention, the purpose of this is exactly the same purpose as the FEMA item that was approved earlier. These funds are for the contract for the at-home testing. These are ARPA funds that are coming from Gopher, so I believe that all of the details on the federal requirements have been provided by Gopher previously, but these are the funds that are more the generalized funds that were granted to the state and Gopher manages and distributes.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2.7 million that we previously approved was actually an agency transfer. It didn't state that it was 100% federal funds, it stated it was an agency transfer.
Yes, so those are FEMA funds, which are federal funds, but they come to us through the Department of Safety, so they are labeled as interagency funds, but they are federal funds to the Department of Safety and interagency to us.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll? Oh, wait, do I have a motion? Yes, yes. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Vote votes yes. Representative Earth.
Yes.
Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Morse.
Yes.
Senator Gaeta.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Humbert.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 10.
That's okay. The vote is 10 in favor, none opposed. Okay, now we'll move to tab 11. No, we did that under 10.
There it is. Here we go.
Okay, well, you told me it was under 10. No, it doesn't matter. We passed it. Okay. All right, so now we are in tab 11. And I would like a motion to accept I'd like a motion to concur with FIS 21-343 and 21-250. I gotta get my eyes checked. 350 on the consent calendar.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Leishman. Do I have a second? Seconded by Senator Daniels to accept on the consent. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Ten, 0. Thank you. Okay. We now move to, under tab 11, FIS 21-353 from the Department of Health and Human Services. So if I could ask the folks from Health and Human Services to come forward. Okay, I will take the minutes that I am the one that requested removal. So if I could, I would like you to please reintroduce yourselves.
Karen Rounds, Chief Financial Officer, DHHS.
Good morning, this is Patricia Tilley. I'm the Director of the Division of Public Health Services in the Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you.
Lori Shibanak, Commissioner.
All right, thank you. I believe that we have a number of questions dealing with this particular request, so who would like to start? Representative Leishman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to thank you folks for the detailed explanation that was provided. I know in the past we've been somewhat critical of not getting all the information from different agencies, but this is a good example of how it should be done. So thank you for that. But going through it, I did have a question on page 3. What is a subrecipient monitoring? What is that? I didn't see it in your handout. Maybe I skipped it, but what is that specifically?
Sure. So subrecipient monitoring is when we provide funds to a contractor and they are acting on our behalf. And the federal government requires us to monitor those contractors differently than, say, a contractor that we ask to paint a wall. So somebody that's delivering services that are statutorily required by our department or federally required by our department to provide, those are subrecipient contractors.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's all I have for the moment, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
I have a few.
Representative Edwards.
Thank you. I want to talk about the vaccine registry, and I want to talk about it in the context of what HHS Oversight produced on November 1st relative to a request of DHHS to do privacy impact assessments on critical information systems. There's a tremendous amount of public interest in what we're going to be doing with this registry. And so I'd like to ask if the department has undertaken the development of a privacy impact assessment for the vaccine registry.
Thank you, Representative Edwards. So we have not currently begun that particular process to do a privacy impact assessment on the immunization information system, which we also call the registry. I will note, however, that the development of both the statute that authorizes the immunization information system and its administrative rules have been a long time in development. Over 10 years, over a decade of work has gone into the development of both the statute and the rules. We're certainly happy to look at those other requirements as recommended at your committee, but we have not done that to date.
Is the system set up so that it'll be an opt-out, or must it be an opt-in?
It is currently, as per the statute, is currently an opt-out system.
No, it's supposed to be an
Okay, so
opt-in.
for all those people who are deeply offended by an opt-out procedure, it's just something we have to accept if
No.
we go ahead and fund
No.
this?
No.
Currently, the way the system is developed, we operate it fully within the context of the law that it is authorized in. I will note that our opt-out system acts very much like an opt-in in other states that have thought about opt-in, because we do require to be notified when information is going to be put into the registry. The provider is supposed to notify the patient and provide an opportunity for them to opt out at that moment.
Can I make a request that if we approve these funds, that you'll work with Mr. Wieters to figure out how we could do a sound privacy impact assessment on the vaccine registry? I would appreciate your commitment to it, because I do think it's a vital piece of public transparency.
Yes.
Madam Chair, a point of order.
Yes.
In a recent letter from the Attorney General, we are not allowed to exact conditions on the approval or disapproval of fiscal funds through this committee. And so therefore, while I respect what Representative Edwards is trying to do, I think it's not in order.
So would you like them to refuse my pleasant request, Senator?
I think you cannot conditionalize a vote on a condition that we established as a committee.
Okay. I did not take that as a conditional comment. I think from my perspective, it was simply asking the HHS if in fact they would do this privacy study. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yes, it wasn't a condition. It was just saying if we pass this, would they be open to committing to doing a privacy impact assessment?
Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Well noted.
If we pass this indicates conditional.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Okay, so we will send a request from Division 3 after whatever happens with this vote.
Thank you. And then just to make sure the public understands how the money is going to be used to enhance the registry. I understand there's a couple of main things that takes place with the registry. One is it seems like it's a vital inventory tracking system to make sure that the vaccine supply that's in the state, we know where it's at, we know how it's being maintained, we understand expiration dates, we can track shipment from point A to point B within the state, we can determine our consumption rates and our waste rates. That's a big part of what this registry does, is it not?
That is correct. It really is an accountability mechanism on our part.